All right, how to get inexperienced goalies or even experienced goalies up to speed quickly. So this is kind of interesting. So in the last week, I've had three conversations with one with a parent who's like a volunteer at a high school in Massachusetts, um, and who doesn't have a dog in the fight. Like so, he doesn't have a son who's a goalie. Um, he's just a volunteer assistant, and they have there's a varsity program, and they graduated 2 goalies last year. They have young goalies now, and then the idea, the other, I had a conversation with an MCLA college coach where, they're just in one of those storms where they're just getting new kids. Um, um, so I'll Jupiter and Ryan, you're still talking. Okay. Jupiter, I'll get back to that one. So, um, let me ask this one quick. Jupiter. So and Bob Nunn. I know Bob Nunn works with you guys. So tennis balls are great. Tennis balls are great, but but only if the goalie still makes the save on game day in front of a lacrosse ball. And that's where there's a little bit of disparity there, right? So you can use tennis balls and that's great, but tennis balls also hurt. Um, but because what the brain is doing for the goalie is once they get to game day, they start going like, well, okay, wait a second. Um, they have to overcome this. Like, I know this is really going to hurt. And then my question is like, even on game day, so let's say you've got your starting goalie and they've been working with tennis balls all week and they know how to make a save and they get into the game and then they take that shot and they chip a bone in their foot or they get nerve damage or they get drop foot. A very common, like this for everybody to understand, a very common problem for goalies is getting shot right on the top of the ankle. So I don't know if you can see this, like if you see my hand, but like right here, right? All those nerves that go down the foot, you get drop foot and then you can't flex your foot up. And it can be a permanent injury. So just something to consider. Okay. Um um Yeah. So Ryan, I don't totally agree with the softer hands thing. Like they do, it does, but like when you shoot them, they shoot them. Um, um, yeah, no, they do. The drill that he suggested earlier, I'll probably use tennis balls. Yeah, go ahead. Um, so okay, moving on. But those are good questions, guys. And if you want to get in touch, and Bob Nunn, when Bob Nunn, Jupiter, you can talk to Bob about that one. But you just have to know, like, can your goalie? Yeah, they might be able to do it in practice in front of tennis balls, but on game day, you're still risking injury, right? That's got to be a valid something a concern as well, right? So okay. So anyway, how to get inexperienced lacrosse goalies up to speed quickly. Now, inexperience is like at every level, right? You can have a Division 1 program where they've had a starting goalie for 2, 3 seasons, and they've had a kid who's been the backup, and now all of a sudden they're in the net, right? Well, there's a level of inexperience there. Um, and then you could have kids that are in high school and junior high, and they've like maybe they haven't played goalie much at all, and there's also a definition of inexperience there. So one of the things to consider is um, well, what do you do? Okay, so what do you do? Well, there's a couple things. Of all the positions on in any sport, a goalie who is inexperienced can come into a team and the team understands that goalie is inexperienced. But if that goalie puts in like just a good effort, right? A good effort. Now you could have like one of the best goalies in the country. Like, so let's say you play in, let's use Florida as an example. Let's say you're from Florida and you get invited to go play with a club team in Maryland, and they've had a great goalie for a long time, and you're coming up there, but there's still a level of inexperience. The team can rally around a goalie, and that a lot of that comes down to the coach. Like a coach who gets with a D and goes, "All right, guys, like listen, here's the deal. Sue here, like has not played a lot of lacrosse, whatever with us, and so we've got to do things better than we've done before. Okay. What I want to understand what I want my team to understand is like, okay, they're going to basically pay attention now to things that they might have gotten away with their other goalie. So the idea is hopefully that the coach and the team starts to rally around the goalie, but the goalie has to put in a really good effort, right? Because a lot of people will give a goalie um, um, the benefit of the doubt, right? So I remember years ago, this is like 12, 13, 14 years ago, I had a goalie in Lacrosse Goalie University that I worked with from California. Um, he was new to the game as a football guy. Like he was like a lineman. And so, just picture the big, fun loving lineman. Everybody loved this kid. He had never played lacrosse. But they recruited him to play because he was like the big dude. And they're like, you take up a lot of space. We're going to put you in the cage. Well, he was horrible. He didn't have any stick skills, nothing. But he got on the baseball shin guards, got in the cage, and man, he just took it. And the team, every time he made a save, the team was like, yes, like, yeah. Right. So one is attitude, right? One is attitude of the team and of the coach, right? The second thing is the attitude of the goalie, or 1A is the attitude of the goalie, just putting in the effort. But outside of that, what I would say is like, all right, if you're trying to get the best accelerated advancement out of a kid, boys or girls, in practice, okay, you guys know what I'm going to say. You have to protect them, which means you have to basically take whatever level of comfort they have in the cage and not destroy it, right? So if I take even the most um, confident of kids and I put them in the cage and then I just beat the living daylights out of them with shots from too close, lacrosse balls, um, you know, stupid drills, I am just grating on the willpower of that goalie, right? Would you agree? Like, and willpower, we all know willpower is like a gas tank, right? You wake up in the morning, you want to stay on your diet. By the afternoon, when you're tired, what happens? You grab something sugary, your willpower is gone. Well, the same thing happens when you're like, learning how to do anything, right? You need to see, like, your brain has to have a bit of a reward, and they've got to be able to feel progress. And the best way to do that is through protection, right? So let's use that Syracuse example that I just showed you. Like that goalie. If I take that goalie, a Division I goalie, played at Virginia, now plays at Syracuse, and we all agree, like, okay, we got to make this off stick low save. Let's get you in there. We're going to shoot balls. Well, if I shoot one ball at that spot and he takes it off his ankle, and now he's hobbling, okay, great. Now he sticks it out, gets back in the cage, and we hit him again and again and again. I'm just beating him down, right? And that's not cool. So protection is number two. So attitude is number one, protection is number two. Number three, the third thing to get to goalie up to speed is stick skills. Okay, so if I have a kid, if I have a player who is has room for improvement with their stick skills, I want them to improve, because the better they are with their stick skills, the better they're going to be in the cage. Okay. And that's just a fact, because I've shared this story a lot, but the idea is like, like the end of a season, maybe you got a meaningless game coming up, or you got a couple practices left and no games, and you have some kid that hops in the cage, like, some attackman or some midi, and they do really well. Right. And sometimes they can show up your goalie who's been in cage all season. Why? Because they have good stick skills. Okay. So if you can improve the stick skills, then because what is a goalie but the best catcher on the field? Right. So if we can improve the stick skills, that's good. So that's number three. Number four is the physical ability of the goalie. Right. So whether that's and that usually comes down to strength. Right. So if I can get a goalie in the cage, like one of my Lacrosse Goalie Universities members right now is this kid who's like 11 years old, super talented with a stick, is really crafty with a stick, but he's weak, like couldn't punch himself out of a wet paper bag. So he's totally on the push-up, regimen, where we're trying to get him to like 10 solid push-ups and then weighted push-ups. So if your goalie is a high school goalie and they can't do push-ups, well, guess what? We can improve your goalie by just getting them stronger. So keep that in mind. So that's number four, number five. The last thing then is setting up clears. And this always catches people kind of off guard. But the idea is that if your goalie finally does make a save, like let's say they just get hit square in the belly button, right? Worst shot ever, hit square in the belly button, ball drops their feet. Now what? Well, the worst thing, the most demoralizing thing for a team is when the goalie and the team around him or her doesn't know what to do with the ball after a save, right? So clearing is one of those things where um, we want to get the ball out of the defensive end, right? And we want to give the offensive a chance. And so while that is not necessarily directly related to like improving a goalie, it somewhat is. It's like, okay, guys, listen, when Sophie gets the ball in the cage, here's what we're going to do. And then you have a plan, right? And so that's where I steer everybody to that video of mine on YouTube, which is a clear for most lacrosse goalies. Just Google that, and I guarantee you, if you run that in your teams, like you will have great success. Mostly for the boys, girls can apply it too a little bit. But the idea there is that when the clear is good, now you're getting the most out of every save from your goalie, right? So we're pulling out every ounce of good performance. Hey, you made that save. I don't care if it hits you in the belly button, but like whatever. Now we're gonna make the most of it. We're at least gonna get a shot on the other end. That's what we want. The worst thing is when you take a goalie and your team loses the face off, and now they're in and they get a shot and it goes in the cage, and now you're facing off again and they win the face off. They come back. Now they're 2 shots to 0 on you. Okay. And now that shot goes, wide and they get possession. Well, now they come back, they take another shot. That's 3 shots to 0 for your team. All right. Now they take a fourth shot, it goes in the cage. 4 shots to 0. Now another face off and you lose it. And it comes back down again. That's a fifth shot on the cage, and your team hasn't even had one. So let's say on the sixth shot, they hit your goalie in the belly button. Thank God, made a save. All right. Now we got to clear that thing. If we can at least clear the ball and get a shot on the other end, well, now that's 6 shots against versus 1 shot of ours. That's at least something. But the worst thing is that, now you get the ball, the offense, and they lose possession. Now it's coming down. The other teams had 7 shots against your nothing. Okay. So that's why clearing is so important. Okay. So that's the best way. That's the number one thing you do to get an inexperienced lacrosse goalie up to speed quickly, right? 1, attitude, right? 2, stick skills. 3, now I can't remember where my list went. I just clicked out of my screen, but you get my point. Okay. You get my point. Okay. Couple things. I think this is for the last, referring more to the past. We have a lot of new guys on my team this year, and they keep snapping at the ball. One dropped the dime pass during the game on Tuesday because he snapped at it. Yeah. So let me, Ryan, I'll just finish with this thought for that. So I've used this example before. Is that so? That's a technique thing, right? That's a total technique thing, like snapping at the ball. Um, what what you want to do there? Okay, what you want to do there. Um, like so what you that all comes down to uh primarily, like, the best way to solve that is on wall ball drills, right? Is wall ball drills, and they get that over the shoulder feeling, right? Or I remember years ago, um actually, I think it was a Salisbury video, um by Championship Productions. They were talking about, you know when you catch the ball here and you bring it back, now you're triple threat, right? You can pass, shoot, or dodge. But if you catch it out here, you're limited. But that's all technique. So if you view your players like a glass of water, for some of your players, their glass of water is totally filled. Like, they can't even think about doing that yet, right? But so the only way you and I'm working on a video for my Athlete OS website on your default, like what the default is for your player. Now, sometimes if the ball is low or whatever, it's they may have to snap at it if they're not like bending their legs and getting low. Um, Choking up on a stick helps out a little bit because they've got a little bit more of a top hand control over the top of the head. That's also important. Okay. One last question here, guys. Daniel Guzman. Need your advice on how I can improve a goalie and their ability to do a 10-man ride. The head coach is adamant about running this all throughout the game instead of in clutch time or a close game. Well, um, so Daniel, what the coach needs to have in place is um i- i- the entire team needs to be on it, right? So Daniel, we're talking high school here or college? I can't remember. Um, Good team, bad team, middle of the road. I can't remember. But the idea here is like on a 10-man ride, like the whole damn team's got to know what the hell's going on, and they also have to know what's going on from every position on the field, right? So high school. So if the ball is like, if the ball's coming in off the opposite end line, okay, well, there's a ride for that. If the ball's coming in, on the bench side, but at the restraining line. Well, there's a ride for that. If there's a if their midi has picked up the ball from the restraining line on the side right and not a long pole, well, what are you going to do? Um, if it's on the opposite sideline, like what are you going to do? So, like, um, there's it's really like it's complex. It's complex and middle of the road, and they bought in our goalie is the weak link because he's not athletically inclined to play out. Well, here's the problem is that to run a 10-man ride, you need an athletic goalie. So from a coaching perspective, I may want to run a 10-man ride, but if my goalie can't run, best example of this was like Trevor Tierney at the world team in like, what was it, '06 or 16? Yeah, '06. Like Team USA lost, like gave up one of the lamest. Actually, it wasn't even a 10-run ride. It was just Trevor was out on a Tierney was out on a like doubling the ball, but he's just not athletically inclined to do so. So as much as you want to have that happen, if you don't have the personnel to do it, then you can't do it. So you know, uh, like if you want to get your goalie up to speed and get them out of the cage and get them athletic, well, that's not, that talks about like getting them in the gym and getting some sprinting going on. But yeah, so um I hope that I hope that helps. So Daniel writes, his saving ability is phenomenal, and the other goalie is very athletic, but his shot stopping isn't as good as the goalie I'm talking about. Yeah, but like running a 10-man ride, this isn't like March Madness college hoops where you're running like a full court press the whole game. Right? Like, and I get it. Like sometimes coaches like want to do certain things and then like, well, okay, how's it working for you? With this goalie. And so, you know, any team sport is it's like a boat, right? They say a boat is a floating compromise, right? Oh, you want more space, but you don't want the drag, or you want to sail, you want the quiets of the sails, but when there's no wind, like you can't move your boat. Like, well, you got to think about that. So, um, I personally hate it. Hate running the 10-man ride, but need to help coach this. Cost us 2 goals last game. Well, you just gotta. A lot of times, okay, a 10-man ride is basically, in my opinion, it's like a zone. Even though it's everybody's on a man, it's really an understanding of zones. So what you have to do, and maybe you can do this with like your long poles and your long stick midi and your goalie, and go, all right, listen, we have to be ready in case if there's a breakdown here. Uh, all right, you've got to slide across and bump, like the LSM has to drop down, bump the long pole over so we can get the goalie back in the cage, so hopefully we can get the ball or pick off like whatever. So working with a team like that, I think would really, really help. But that's a good question though, Daniel. Um, but like I said, like you can only do so much with what you have, and if your attack breaks down because they don't know how to ride, or your middies break down because they don't know how to ride, I don't know. Personally, I don't know. Personally, a lot of times with certain teams, I just say like if the ball gets past the attack, our attack, just drop in the hole. Let's play some defense, right? Because why do you need the ball in transition, right? Like can you score in transition? That's another thing to ask. Is like, yeah, you might be able to run a 10-man ride, but can you score off it, or are you just getting possession? Well, does it matter if we get possession in the attack half or in the defensive half? Right? If we can clear the ball, like fine. And now you're also saving the gas out of everybody because it costs more energy to play defense than it does to play offense, right? So if your team is like running all over the field trying to run a 10-man ride and you're breaking down at the attack or the midi level, well, then you just don't have it, right? You're probably better off just getting everybody in the hole, hang out, chill, relax, take a break, and then we'll play some 6-on-6 defense, right? And then we'll win it that way. So I would be all over your stats. I would be all over your statistics, making sure that like, what your effectiveness is on the ride, like where is it, when it breaks down, where is it breaking down? Do you have one slow attackman that's killing you? Um, right? Like you've got to know all of that to do that effectively, right? So, and then you got to understand like what's the cost benefit, and not in the first quarter, but by the fourth quarter, like are your middies just gassed now because they've been running 100-yard sprints all day? Um, Probably, right? Probably. So that's a good question. Okay. Um, Question here. Okay, Anne. What about getting up to speed and tricky close in the goal shots? Um, what about getting up to speed and tricky close in the goal shots? Our team love to practice score by shooting tricky ones, but he is not up to speed with them. Okay, that's a good question. And so, if your team like has developed this trend, I know you've got a young goalie, so if your team has this like thing where they want to do, they've all learned a certain shot, right? And they start doing it in practice because the defense isn't that good. They can pull it off in practice, but if that's not what your goalie sees in the game, I would talk to the coach and go, "Hey, listen, we're all for creativity, and our guys may score on that sometime on a game, but our goalie doesn't see that shot at all. None of the other teams do that shot." Right. Well, then it's like your goalie needs to be playing against the things they're going to see, because if all your goalie sees in practice is something tricky and they're not actually learning, the language of lacrosse, like that's where, I use the example like the language of lacrosse because you want to learn like the nouns first in a language, right? Right? Car, house, church, grocery store, you know, you learn the nouns first and then you learn the verbs, right? So it's like, I'm walking to the church, right? Um, but if in practice all you're learning is verbs, ah, you still can't. It's not useful, right? So that's where if you have a team and this happens sometimes with young teams where they're like all of a sudden they learn like behind the back, they're like everybody's behind the back. It's like, okay, guys, like, okay, hold up, let's do this right. And so that's where a coach just needs to go, like, all right, we're going to practice the stuff we're going to see mostly, and then we're going to have time for that. And maybe that's like 5% of practice, or he just opens it up for practice. Then it's a bit of a free for all, and everybody's having a fun time, and that's good, right? And that's totally good. Okay. Um, so that'll be, does that help, Anne? Like it should. Our team love to practice score, but shooting tricky ones, but he's not up to speed with them. The other thing, though, Anne, is to help him understand, like, well, what's happening? Like, so video a couple of them and look at him and go, like, okay, in this situation, when Jimmy does that, the ball's going to go here. Okay, um, so how are you going to make that save? And so now your son goes like, okay, yeah, okay. Well, when I see Jimmy do that, I know the ball goes there. I'm just gonna get in front of the ball and go there. And then he'll do that in practice, and he'll be like, "Yeah, see you, Jimmy. Get out of here. Learn a new trick, right? Don't be a one-trick pony, Jimmy." And if you teach him how to say that in Swedish, then really good. Okay. Um. Okay. Ryan Carey's writing. Thanks for your help, coach. I'll try to make it to more of these. I'm gonna head out. Ain't no rest for the wicked. Have a good one, and I'll keep you all updated for my season. We won 8-1 yesterday, and I had 12 saves. We have 3 games next week, so I'm excited. Have a good night. Awesome, Ryan. Good luck, buddy. And right, thanks. Yes, we'll do. Good stuff. Okay. All right. Listen, everybody. I hope that helps. Went totally long tonight, but that Syracuse clip was good. Um, Appreciate all the questions and uh yeah, just lots of good stuff. Listen, if you haven't already, so I run another group called Raising High Performing Athletes. Uh, Go ahead and follow that on Facebook. I'm actually going right from this to do another. I'm going to do my podcast over there. We're going to start putting those out. If you haven't already, go over to the Athlete OS, like the athleteoperating Sign up for any of the freebies. You'll be on the newsletter list. We're going to do kind of what I do here, where I'll pick like 3 topics once a week. We'll do the Facebook Live. And then throughout the week, we'll post like the individual clips. Tonight, we are talking about, now I can't remember what we're talking about. What are we talking about tonight? One, we're talking about why Um, and I might have covered, I might be duplicating this, but like I think I covered this a while ago. But this concept, like the kids aren't tired, but the parents sure are. All right, so we'll talk about that a little bit, and why that's a big, why that's a big deal. Um, I'm also going to talk about goal setting for athletes at any age, and why it's so important for the athletes and then the parents and the people around the athletes to be supportive of that goal. This involves like teachers, it involves like any sort of medical people in your life, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, things like that. We're going to cover that. And then also, we're going to talk about taking 100% responsibility for everything. So I hope if you don't have a copy of my book, head on over to Amazon.com and look up An Athlete's Guide to Winning in Sports and Life. Uh, Go ahead and order it. I think it went on sale on Kindle, but if you're a Kindle folk, but it's a great book. I'm really proud of it. So check that out. And then, but yeah, if you want to join us over there, I will be heading over there shortly. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com and check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.